Typically, the most stressful part of a transaction for buyers and sellers alike is the home inspection. I think a lot of that on the buy side is due to a lack of expectations or preparation going into the inspection, and also a lack of what to do with that information following the inspection. So, I'm clearing the air to help you as a buyer avoid the almost inevitable stress that does come with the home inspection. So, first of all, let's understand what a home inspection is. You, as a buyer, are hiring a professional who's on your team, they're working for you to help evaluate the home's condition from literally top to bottom. Their goal is to help you understand as much as you can about the house so that you can make informed decisions moving forward. Now, a lot of people say, Paul, do I need to get a home inspection? No, you certainly do not. Should you get a home inspection? 110%. I think the peace of mind that you get from a home inspection is well worth the value. So much so that it's honestly a no-brainer 99.9% of the time. I seriously can't think of many situations where I would say you shouldn't, or you don't need to, or you have my blessing to not get a home inspection. And frankly, even if a buyer was a home builder or a licensed contractor, I would still be reluctant about waiving an inspection. Unless you're fully confident in yourself to understand every part of a home, then, at your discretion, do what you gotta do, big dog. But if it's up to me, I think it's very much money well spent having a professional inspector come in and look things over. You have to understand that every house is going to have defects, and the inspection is to show you those, help you understand those, and help you understand, the severity of them. Something I tell literally all of my buyers to help set expectations going into inspection is that you need to understand your inspection report is not a to-do list. It's not a punch list that you just give to the seller and say, hey, you got to fix all this stuff. Unless you have found literally the chillest sellers ever, it's a good chance no one's just going to take that report and say, yeah, we'll get to it. Also, every inspection report is going to have dozens of items on it. Majority of the time, a lot of those things are simple maintenance items or just things to, kind of keep your eye on. And then others may be more significant. But again, the goal isn't to ask the seller to fix everything. The goal is to understand the condition of your home and to decide whether or not there are significant enough things to negotiate. Something else that I always tell my buyers that I really hope you can internalize too is that the inspection is literally just negative stuff about your house. It's only the bad things. You aren't going to spend time with your inspector walking through, talking about how nice the kitchen remodel is or how good the good things are. And you talk about the negative things, the bad stuff, because that's what's important during your inspection period anyways. We're kind of just putting to the side the good stuff and focusing on the bad stuff so that we can understand it and either negotiate it or move forward having that knowledge, knowing, the things that you'll have to look out for in your house or the things that may become an issue further down the road. It's always overwhelming to not only do the inspection walkthrough, but getting that report back. But that's why you have an agent to help walk you through that stuff and help you understand, what are things that are normal and what are things that are actually scary. So before we dive into what inspectors are actually looking at during the home inspection, I just wanted to say thanks for watching this video. My name is Paul Winkleman. I'm an agent here in the Twin Cities, and this channel is all about helping first-time home buyers understand the process, make informed decisions, and, generally just feel confident in this huge step that they are going to make. If you'd like to reach out to me and ask any more specific questions, if you want to pick my brain about anything, if you just want to say what's up, you can reach out to me on Instagram, through email. I have a website. Any of those mediums, they're all in the info below. I promise whichever route you go, you will get a hold of me. Okay, enough with the plugs. What are inspectors looking at? Most importantly, inspectors are looking at the major systems of the home. That would be things like your roof, your foundation, the electrical, the plumbing, the HVAC, the attic, the windows, the doors, the exterior of the home, the insulation, your appliances, any signs of water intrusion, pretty much anything they can get at without literally breaking into the wall. And full disclaimer, as much as I bet you and I both wish it were true, inspectors cannot predict the future. It's very easy to ask them during an inspection, like, hey, I know this is in rough shape. Do you think we can get 10 more years out of it? Or how long do you think it's going to last? A lot of the time, they can't really speak on that stuff, which is understandable. They don't want to be held liable, and that's a better question suited for maybe a specific professional contractor in that field. But regardless, they do have great insight and, can at least tell you like, hey, well, here's the typical lifespan and here's where this is at, or here's what we typically see, and here's when it can start to become a major problem. They spend hours looking over the house, going over literally everything, like I said, from top to bottom. Inspectors most likely have an order of operations of how they work, and they also make note of everything that they're seeing as they go through their list. Typically, how it works around Minnesota is that you as a buyer show up around the last hour of their inspection, which is reserved for the inspection walkthrough. And essentially, you spend an hour going through everything that the inspector just spent hours looking over. This is usually everything that's included in your report, but it is a great opportunity to, have someone explain it to you in person. Also, you can ask questions, bounce stuff off of them, or, maybe they say something and you're like, I actually don't know what that is. Can you, help further explain that to me? And as a buyer, this is huge, and it's, very highly recommended that you are available to be there for that inspection walkthrough. Like I said, you get the opportunity to ask questions. You get to learn about your home. Inspectors will show you, where your main water line shutoff is, where your gas shutoff is. They'll show you how the furnace works, where the filters are. They'll give you tips on how to maintain your major systems so that you get more life out of them. Things to look out for, or signs that could show that those mechanical systems are starting to fail or are reaching the end of their life. I like to think of the walkthrough as like home ownership 101. It's like, here's your how-to, here's your house manual on how everything works, how to keep the ship running smoothly. I personally pride myself on my knowledge of homes and the systems in place and the parts of a home, but ultimately, I and other agents were not inspectors. And during showings, we can only do so much with the time that we have and with what we're allowed to kind of do in the house. So again, another reason why it is pretty important to be getting your home inspected. And usually, if the panic or the stress hasn't set in during the inspection walkthrough, your next opportunity is going to be upon receiving your report back from the inspector. So let's clear this up. On a typical report, you may find anywhere from 40, 60 to 100 items being noted from the inspector. That's overwhelming. 100 things to look over that are wrong with your house. Totally overwhelming and very understandable to get a little stressed upon receiving that. But typically, majority of those items on the report are maintenance, cosmetic, or safety recommendations. So that would be things like loose outlets, a bad caulking job, dirty gutters, worn weather strips, staining on the carpet maybe. Those are kind of the maintenance and cosmetic things you can expect to see Safety stuff, usually it's things like GFCI outlets not being in place within 6 feet of a water source. That almost always shows up on an inspection report. Not a huge deal. That is something that you as a homeowner could fix for $20, and you watch one YouTube video on how to switch out an outlet. Other things, missing smoke detectors or CO2 detectors, that is a safety hazard, but is it a major concern? Not really, because it's a pretty easy fix. Regardless, it's still adding to the overall list, so it just adds, an overwhelming element to everything. What's truly important, though, is understanding, being able to distinguish the things that will need attention versus the things that should probably get negotiated with the seller. Almost every house, I'll say it, is going to have or need some type of cosmetic update. After all, unless it's a new build, you're essentially buying a used house. So is there going to be wear and tear? For sure. But like I said, differentiating from typical house issues to major structural, safety, or mechanical issues is the goal here. Examples of that would be things like the furnace not working, or major settlement or foundation issues in the basement. Maybe there's an active roof leak, or maybe there's some weird electrical going on in the house. These are more serious safety hazards, what should be more concerning to you as a buyer, as opposed to paint, sticky doors, minor cracks, old carpet, things like that. So, following your inspection walkthrough and upon receiving your report, then what? What do things look like? There's a couple ways how things can play out from there. You can accept the home as is. You can request the seller to make repairs. You can request for a concession at closing to help go towards those repairs. You can go back and renegotiate existing terms in the purchase agreement. Maybe the easiest route is to just reduce the purchase price, or maybe you'd like to have the sellers pay your closing costs to go towards issues that you found in inspection, as opposed to lowering the purchase price. Or the last option is you walk away based on, finding too many things and not being able to negotiate that with the sellers. As a buyer, it is very important to understand the inspection contingency as a whole and what it means to you. As we've kind of laid out already, the contingency itself gives you the chance to inspect the home. From there, you can decide whether you want to move forward or back out of the transaction. It never guarantees that the seller will fix everything or anything. The negotiation is exactly what it is. It's a negotiation. Some things are typically easier to negotiate with the seller as opposed to others. Now, radon is very common up here in Minnesota. So if you get a radon test and you find that there is radon in your basement, you're not on like a cursed house. It's not 1 in a million. It is very common up here in Minnesota. And ultimately, it is a health and safety hazard to a new buyer. So when a radon test gets completed and comes back with very high levels, it's not uncommon for a seller to agree to put in a radon mitigation system at their expense. That does depend on what else you're asking, or if that's the only ask. But again, because it's health and safety, less opportunity for pushback on a radon mitigation system. In addition to a radon test, something else you can get as part of your inspection is a sewer scope, which is something that I very, very highly recommend. Your sewer line is essentially the only thing you really can't see when you're looking at a house, because it's totally underground. I don't think, and I haven't seen in my experience, that a lot of people are, regularly getting their sewer scoped or regularly cleaning it out. It can just get easily forgotten about, and, sometimes it's not an issue until it is, and then you find out, hey, yeah, there's been ongoing issues in my sewer, but we just haven't looked down there in years, so we didn't know. Again, if you're going through negotiations, depending on what you're asking for, if there is an issue in the sewer line, maybe there's a lot of root intrusion or a lot of scale buildup. I personally have had pretty good luck with sellers getting them to have that cleaned out and rescoped at their expense. And I do think a lot of that is because it's a big unknown. Asking the seller to take care of that is much different than going to them and saying, hey, you have to replace the carpet because it's really stained in one of the bedrooms. They're probably going to say, you didn't see that during your walkthrough, like, no, you made an offer on the house based on what you saw, and that stain was there. So you're probably going to get some pushback if you ask them to replace the carpet. And maybe the most important thing to know about the inspection contingency is that you as a buyer can back out of the transaction at any point within your inspection window and still retain your earnest money. And so sometimes you may find yourself in a pretty difficult position of, how many things can we ask the seller to fix? How many of these things are we willing to take on ourselves if the sellers say that they won't fix them? So if during your inspection you do find an overwhelming amount of big ticket items, I think this is where a lot of the stress and panic can kind of set in for buyers. Sometimes you're put in a pretty hard position of, having to decide which of these big ticket issue items should we try and ask to get some concessions on or have the seller fix? And, maybe what of these things are we willing to take on ourselves? Again, it's all negotiable. So sometimes a seller can be open to fixing everything. Maybe if you ask for 4 big ticket items, they'll come back and, say, hey, we'll work with you on 2 of those, but the other 2 has to be your responsibility. Or, they could say, no, sorry, we can't. We're not going to make any concessions towards this stuff. And then you're left with really the hardest decision of, is it worth it? Can we even move on? Is it feasible? Does it make sense financially? The wheels get spinning. And like I said, the stress really can start to set in. And so that's why understanding that within your inspection contingency, you are allowed to back out at any time and retain your earnest money is such an important thing to remember. In my experience, buyers and sellers alike don't really want the deal to fall through once you're getting to inspection. As a buyer, obviously, if you back out, the search continues. You kind of feel like you're back to square one, and there may be like an extra sense of defeat because you've already gone through putting in an offer, you did your earnest money, you paid for the inspection, which you can't get back, and now, again, like I said, you're left back at square one. Sellers don't want to take the house off the market, lose all that time from potential showings, and then have to go back on the market. Now they have material facts that they know about that they have to disclose to future buyers, which can then affect the interest in the property. People may not want to go see this house if they know that the furnace is broken, the roof is leaking, and the basement's crumbling. And just because there's so many moving parts usually in a real estate transaction and a lot of timelines that need to get met that, if a seller's banking on selling this house so that they can buy this house, and maybe your buyers are banking on their house selling so they can buy this house. See what I mean? It can get very jumbled very quick, and the repercussions of the deal falling through can have a ripple effect on both sides of the transaction. That doesn't mean that this doesn't happen. I've had it with buyers of my own, and sometimes a common ground just can't be met, and the only way forward is to just cancel the purchase agreement. But like I said, this is where I or your agent come into play. They are here, we are here to help, bring down the stress, talk things out, understand what's scary and what's not that bad, and figure out the way to move forward where everyone is happy and everyone is in agreement. Remember this to help put you in the right mindset. If you're buying a home that was built in 1920 and 1930, you can't expect it to inspect like a home built in 2000. That's a bad comparison. Every home should be judged based on its age, its price, and its condition, not based on what a perfect home is. And again, just to really hammer it home, the inspection is not designed to scare you out of buying a house. It is designed to help you as the buyer make informed decisions, and the goal shouldn't be to find a perfect home. The main goal is to understand the home that you are buying. Appreciate y'all for watching this video. I'll see you on the next one. Bye.